it's Leslie with the New Mexico Small Business Development Center. I'm here with Annalena. We are bringing you Eric Spellman, public speaker today. His topic today is, hey Eric, his topic today is how to choose the perfect web designer. And Eric always tells me, and I just want to let everyone know that if you have any questions, go ahead and type them right into the Q&A or raise your hands, because he loves to kind of get that interaction with the people attending the webinar. So if you have questions, you're like, wait a minute, what are you saying? I'm not sure about that. Go ahead and type into the Q&A. Also, we have enabled closed captioning. It is down a little white button that says CC Live Transcript. If you want to turn off your closed captioning, you'll just click on that and it'll have a thing that says hide subtitles. So you can enable your closed captioning or you can turn it off. So again, if you have any questions, let us know, and I will turn it over to Eric Spellman.
Okay, well, I'd like to welcome everybody. How to choose the perfect web designer. This topic is one I get asked about quite a bit. And so a lot of people make mistakes. You know, they suddenly need a website. You know, suddenly they can't open their brick and mortar location. And so they've got to rely on online. Well, maybe they don't have a website, or maybe they have a terrible website. But either way, you got to get your online affairs in order. That's what this is about. Now, just so you know, in this presentation, I'm going to be referencing quite a bit something called the checklist. And you will get it. It'll be emailed to you, or you can download it. I'll let my host decide how they want to do it. And basically, it's just a little one-pager you can use when asking a web designer questions, when you're interviewing them, or when you're on the phone with them. So don't worry, you're going to get it with all the questions on there, even little blanks you can fill out as well. But let's dive right into it. And you'll also be getting a copy of these slides. So if you're taking notes, don't feel like you have to write every single thing down, because you're going to get all of this. But what I want you to do is maybe write down how it applies to you. Write down some notes you want to remind yourself of at the end of this. Like, oh, he said this, we need to do that. So feel free to take those notes. Also, ask questions. Please ask questions. That's what this is about. You know, you've got me cheap right now, but in an hour, my rates jump considerably for questions. So take advantage of this time. So let's jump right into it. You know, before we start talking about getting a web designer, you have to ask the question, why do you even want a website? I mean, you may be in a situation where you are having to rely more on online and then the web in order to do business. But why? A lot of people jump into getting their websites designed without thinking why they even want a website. And trust me, you're going to make mistakes if you do that. Some people just see a website as like, you know, check marks that they need to do on their way to run a business. And that's also not right either. So why have a website? What are you trying to do? Are you wanting an online billboard? Are you wanting leads and sales? Is it for branding? Is it for all of that? You got to figure out the reason. Because let me tell you, the goal of a website is not advertising. It's not advertising. It's not advertising. Your website does not advertise. Even though we call the internet the information superhighway, no one is going to drive by your website and see something, okay? They have to want to go there. They have to click a link. And so I don't want you to think about a website as an online billboard or even a virtual pamphlet, okay? It's got to do something. And how will you measure return on investment? You know, you're going to spend some money on having a website built if you are going to have someone build it. And how are you going to get that money back? Not only how are you going to get it back, how are you going to know if it was worth it? Was it a waste of money? Or is your company now making more money? In future episodes, if you will, we'll be talking a lot about measuring ROI. measuring that return on investment. Because remember, and you've heard me say this in almost every presentation, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. Okay? If you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So we'll be talking a lot more about that. Who is the audience? In other words, who is the website built for? Yeah, a lot of people say, well, it's built for my customers. Well, duh, but who are they? You have to define who they are. What your owner, you, the owner, customers. I mean, who are you building this for? You'd be surprised. Some of you'll see that owner on there and you think, no one builds a website for the owner. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. I have built websites for companies who, when I talked to the people that I worked with, they said, really, it's for the owner. He's got to approve on it. It's for him. He wanted a website, so let's build it for him. That's the biggest mistake in the world, people. It's got to be for your customers, not the owner. It's got to be for the customers. It's not for you. You've got to use lingo they will understand, not that you understand. Too many people, I swear, they get a website built and it's designed internally. They have a committee, put together all the content, and all the words are like highfalutin words that maybe people in that industry understand, but us normal people have no clue. You've got to design a website for your customers. Remember that. Use words they understand. Okay. What is your brand? Okay. I mean, if you're building a website, keep in mind that website must be built around your brand. What is that? Do you even have a logo or a tagline? And we'll talk about how to get those in future episodes. A logo is just a symbolic representation of your company. And that when people see it from a distance, they automatically associate it with the name of your company, like the McDonald's arches. Do you have a logo? Do you have a tagline? The tagline is like words that are associated with. You say the name of your company and those words, like McDonald's, I'm loving it. I'm loving it is the tagline. And you can change taglines regularly, but your logo should stay pretty consistent. Do you have content? What are you going to put on this website? And if all you do is go and grab your little brochures and copy and paste them into the website, no, do not do that. The content that's on your website must be something that people want. Don't put stuff out there that even you wouldn't read, okay? It's got to be what they're looking for. Keep in mind, the goal of your website is to generate, like I said earlier, a lead or a sale. Branding is kind of the third, but really you're looking for a lead or a sale. And if all you do is put boring content out there, what about pictures? You got pictures for it? What kind of pictures are you going to use? You got personal pictures? You got stock photography? What do you got? And we'll talk a lot about pictures and the best way to do them in a future episode. But you got to realize that everyone on the internet has ADD and they're lazy. And they're going to scan your website. And if the pictures you use are boring or irrelevant to what you're talking about, people will not make the connection. You've got to look at every single picture that goes on your website and say, does this picture make someone more likely to contact me or less likely, or does it not affect them at all? Unless the answer is more likely to contact me, you don't use it. And by the way, that saying goes for all web content. Before you add anything to a website, you got to ask yourself, is it going to make people more likely to contact me or less, or not affect them at all? Too many people, I remember back in the old days when the internet was young, there would be companies who would put up a weather forecast on their website. I'm like, why does a plumber have a weather forecast? It made no sense. And so don't put stuff on a website just because it's cute. Don't get me started. That's a whole new another topic we'll get to. Don't forget, when do you need it? Okay. When do you need this website? Make a list of sites you like and dislike. I can't tell you before you call anyone, before you have any kind of meeting with a web designer, you've got to have some of these questions already answered. Do you have something coming up? Is your company seasonal? And so the website must be launched by this day. Or do you have some big product release you're about to do? Or is the boss expecting it to be up by a certain point? You better have that date in mind, because the web designer is going to ask you. And if you don't give them a date, if you don't say we need it by this day, guess what? Your web design project may take months. I've had a web design project take over a year simply because I couldn't get info from the customer. When do you need that site? And this will help more than anything. When you talk to that web designer, you make a list of sites, in your industry, hopefully. And what I want you to do is simply write down what you like and don't like about them. Designers are visual. You've got to realize that. And so if you show them, like on a screen, I like this website. I like how they did this. I don't like that. When you show them, because they're visual, they're more likely to get it. You need to know what you like and don't like, because if you're going to suddenly ask a web designer, build me a site, it becomes so tough on them because they don't know what you like. They don't know what your customers like. So give them some help, and it'll also speed it up tremendously. It's one of the easiest things I can tell you to do is to make a list of other websites that you like and don't like and why. So here we go with the checklist. And basically what you're going to see from this point forward is I'm going to go through every single point on that list that you can download or will be sent to you, and what it means and why you're even asking it. But trust me, your next web design project will be amazing, but only if you do your work ahead of time. And that work means going through this checklist. Number one, how many years have you been making websites? You need to find out if these people have been doing it a long time. When the pandemic hit and everyone had to go work at home, all of a sudden there was a whole bunch of web designers, people who had to do something on their computer at home, so they became web designers. You got to realize there's no license to be a web designer. There's no test you have to take. Anyone can call themselves that. Anyone. And so one of the first questions I have is, how long have you been doing this? Or is this a recent endeavor? So how many years have you been making websites? Now, if they say 50, hang up. Duh, internet hadn't been around that long. But I would look for someone who's at least been doing it for 5, maybe. 5 years would give me a good comfort level. Number 2 on the checklist. What is your rating with the Better Business Bureau? Now, granted, you can go look that up yourself, but I find it often helpful just to ask them. Now, for those of you who don't know, the Better Business Bureau, what it does is it doesn't inspect businesses. All it does is it tries to see if complaints have been handled. Okay. Like when you see A+ on the Better Business Bureau, what that means is that this person has shown that whenever a complaint about his or her company pops up, they deal with it. Now, they may not deal with it in the way the customer wanted, but they acknowledge it. Really, the only way you drop on the Better Business Bureau grade list is if you don't answer customers, is if you don't deal with problems, is if you ignore your customers. Okay. Or yeah, like you cheated them or something like that. But really ask them what their rating with the Better Business Bureau is. If they say they're not with the Bureau, hang up. Because that's one clue. They're a small time operation and your business deserves better. If they don't know what that is, hang up again. I'm just telling you, the Better Business Bureau is one of the best ways to verify that who you're dealing with is a professional and someone who's had experience and someone who knows how to take care of the customer. Are there any questions yet? Feel free to just click raise hand or go to the chats and type a question there. I'm more than happy to answer them. Number 3 on our checklist. Have you ever built websites for companies like mine? And if so, can I contact them? This is a big one. You never want to just find out, have they built other websites? No, that's not good enough. Because every web designer is going to say they built a website. Chances are it was their own. What you want to know is, do they have any experience building websites for people in your industry? You see, whenever I was building websites and I did it for a new industry, I would have to go research that industry. I would have to understand their customers. I would have to learn everything about that company. More importantly, what appeals to the customers of that company in order to build their website. If you're dealing with a web designer who has never done a website for someone who does what you do, be nervous. Now, if they have done it for someone who does what you do, then ask to see it. I'm telling you, this is one of the best ways to vet a web designer. If they've been doing it a while, and like I said, 5 years maybe, guaranteed they've probably done a business like yours, unless you do something so abstract that no one's ever seen it. Okay. And may you contact them. I love contacting people and asking them what their experience is. Okay. If they won't give you anyone like that, if they say, oh, that's private information, our customer data is private, malarkey. Okay. That just means that they don't have a happy customer to let you talk to. So always ask for a referral to someone who has that they've done business with, hopefully recently too. Number 4, do you have a designer on staff or do you use templates? Now, they might do both. A template basically is almost like a pre-made website, and then you just go in and change the information. Or do they have a designer? Do they have a graphic designer, someone who understands color and layout, and someone who can make you a national website? Think about it this way. Have you ever been to a website and it looks like it was designed by a 12-year-old? Of course we have. It looks garbagey and it's awful. And then you've been to websites that look national, but when you drill down and you realize that's someone working out of their home, but the website looks national. Keep in mind, the number one barrier to people doing business with you on the internet is trust. And if your website looks like it was put up yesterday by the neighbor kid, that doesn't build much trust. But if it looks professional, much like a good brick and mortar building, then people have a comfort level with stability of your company. And they're more likely to do business with you. I'm telling you, a quality website, whether they read anything on it or not, can reduce the trust barrier to a point where your customers can get right in. I have no problem with templates. I have no problem with people using templates as long as, number one, it's appropriate for my customers and it looks good. But you want to know the most important thing? Does it tie with my logo? You see, when someone has a logo, everything about their advertising and marketing must be wrapped around that logo. The colors in the logo, the text style, everything must be tied to that logo. And so that's why a lot of good web designers ask for that logo up front, is because the whole website's going to be based on that. Number 5. How many people will be working on my site? This may seem like a strange question because basically it's not that you're asking how many people work with you. You're saying how many people will work on my site. In other words, is there someone who's a graphic designer? Is there someone who's a coder, a programmer? Is there someone who is in marketing? Is there someone who's social media? Is there someone who's this or that? You know what I'm saying? It's find out. Or is it just one person? I'm not a fan of the one person web designer thing. I'm really not. And the reason is because when there's only one person working on your website, you're basically only getting one opinion, one choice, which isn't one set of eyes, one set of ideas. Whereas if you have multiple people working on it, you're going to get input from a lot of other people. And I'm a big fan of that. Because, and I'll just tell you this, in the web design business, typically you do not have people who are amazing at graphic design and amazing at coding and amazing at social media and no, you don't have that. So I would prefer a web design firm that had people who specialize. Number 6, do I legally own the design and content of a site you build for me? Is that in writing? Now, a lot of states have the laws I'm about to tell you. Now, in Texas, which is where I am, the law is this, and I believe it's the same for New Mexico as well. But the law is this: if a web designer builds a website for me and I pay the web designer, does that mean I own legally the website they built for me? No, it does not. You see, because when an artist creates a work, the artist retains the intellectual property rights to what they created. And in the state of Texas, that is very true. Where this comes into play is when you get upset with your web designer. So let's say you had a web designer build you a website and you don't like it, or you don't like the hosting, maybe. You're hosting with them and you want to move it somewhere else. Well, guess what? You can't. You say, hey, I want to move the website to my own hosting. I don't want to pay for your hosting anymore. Or I want to take it from you and give it to a new web designer to work on. You know what the original web designer is going to say? No, you're not. You're not leaving me. If you leave me, you're starting completely over because I own your website. But I paid you for the website. Doesn't matter, because the web designer owns the intellectual property rights to what he created. What I'm telling you here is that whenever you sign a contract with a web designer, you want them to release all intellectual property rights to what they created for you. The only way to make sure you legally own that website and that no one can pull it out from under you is to make sure that you legally own it. And the only way to do that is to get it in writing. The intellectual property rights are key. They really, really, really are. And while I'm on it, do you actually own the rights to your .com? When a lot of people started, they had the web designer go out and register their .com for them. But did the web designer register the .com in their name or yours? I once had a situation where someone wanted to move their website to me, but they couldn't do it because the .com, they didn't own their .com. They didn't have control of it. The web designer did, and the web designer refused to do it. I'm telling you, and even in a court of law, the web designer owned it technically, and so he controlled it. So if you're going to have someone register your .com for you, make sure that they put it in your name as the administrative contact. Okay, there's a lot of contacts. There's a billing contact, technical contact, and administrative contact on the .coms. You want to make sure that your company is the administrative contact. In other words, the person who owns it. Okay, so there's a lot of pieces to that. You want to own it, own it, own it, own it, own it. Number 7. Is hosting included in your pricing? When a web designer gives you pricing or they give you a package, they may include or may not include hosting. Now, hosting is like you're going to pay rent. You have this mobile home that you bought, this website, but you need a place to put it, to park it, to make it available. And so you need to rent space on the internet on someone's servers. That's what hosting is. It's the place, it's the lot you put your website on, and a lot you don't know. So you need to find out if that's included, because if it's not, the pricing can be a lot higher. Another question to ask, which isn't on here, is can I put it on my own hosting? In other words, can you choose hosting? Can the customer choose where it goes, or does it have to be hosted with the person designing your website? Now, sometimes it does. I'll just be honest with you. Sometimes it does. If they are using what we call a content management system, in other words, a very specialized way of you updating your own website, some specialized software, then you may have to host it with them because of that software. But if they're using something like WordPress, which is the largest CMS out there, the largest content management system out there, if you're using something like WordPress, then yeah, you can pretty much host it anywhere because everywhere supports WordPress. So keep that in mind. Keep hosting in mind when you're talking about your website. And if they're going to do hosting, there's a whole set of questions you need to ask about hosting. What you don't want is you don't want them hosting it on like a server in their garage. Okay. Because your website is your website, it's your building. And if they lose power to their house where that server is, your website goes down, plus everyone else they have hosted. We don't need Uncle Larry's, house of hosting. I would prefer you using a larger brand. I don't have any recommendations on that. I mean, you just have to, they're out there, a lot of them out there, including some of the biggest ones, like GoDaddy, HostGator, and there's a bunch of them out there that are really good. So I'd prefer to use a big one for hosting. Okay. And then find out what their pricing is. And when you find out pricing, find out if it's based on the amount of information flowing. In other words, are you getting charged for the data or is it unlimited data? And you're getting charged for, just having a place. So I pretty much like unlimited data if I can get it in hosting. Okay. Number 8. Can I update this website myself? And how is that done? When the website launches, your website's going to change. Now, some of you out there, you had a website built for you a year ago and you haven't touched it since. There's so many problems with that. I won't even go into it now, but most of it has to do with search engine optimization. In other words, showing up in Google. Okay. A website is meant to change on a regular basis. It is not a billboard. It is not, like I said, a check off and then forget about it for a year. The website is going to, I'll be honest, it's where the majority of people are going to have their first impression with you. Did you know that? The first impression that say 90% of your customers will ever have with you is your website. Because when they're looking, they'll find that first. Okay. So whatever first impression they're going to get is going to be key. And if they look at it and you're referencing things that are very, very, very old, or it's just so obvious you don't update it, they're done. They want to know if you're updating. Also, keep in mind search engine optimization. Google knows if you're updating your website, and it's only going to show websites that are updating regularly above those that are like museum pieces that haven't been touched. So keep in mind, you start updating your website, your rankings will do better automatically. So how is that going to be done? If you need a name changed here, a new staff member put in the About Us, or something like that, are you going to have to pay the web designer to do that every single time? Or does the web designer have a way for you to do it or someone on your staff to do it? This is a big, big, big question. A lot of web designers make a lot of money just in updates, Whereas if you have your web designer build it in a format that allows you to update it or someone on your staff, then you don't have to pay for that. All you're really paying at that point is hosting. So I highly recommend asking for one that can be updated. Now, don't just wait for them to say, yes, you can update it. Say how. What are you using? Is it WordPress? Something where there's a million different lessons on YouTube on how to use? Or is it your own very proprietary, very specialized, no one's ever heard of it, CMS? Find that out and know whether you're going to be updating it or whether you're going to pay someone else to. Number 9, will my website be optimized for cell phones and tablets? In other words, will it be responsive? Let me explain what that means. Back in the day, when websites were first made, there really weren't smartphones. They just really weren't around. And so no one cared. A website was to be seen on a computer screen. That was it. And then the smartphones came out, iPhones and Androids and all of that. And you could start surfing the web on a phone. And what people discovered was that while a website looked amazing on a big computer laptop screen, it looked terrible on a little cell phone because you couldn't read it. And so cell phones made it to where you could zoom in and zoom in. And a lot of us remember websites that we had to do that on our phones, is that we had to, zoom in and move all around, and it was a pain in the butt. Well, then somebody came out with, well, we will make 2 versions of our website. We will make a mobile version, and then we'll have the PC version, which, while it brought a lot of business to web designers because they actually created a duplicate of the website, but in small format that would cover most cell phones and most tablets. The problem with that is whenever you made a change, you had to make it in 2 places. So what they finally came up with was responsive web design. Responsive. What that means is there's only one website. But when you land on it, the website determines, okay, what are they looking at me on? Are they looking at me on a PC? Are they looking at me on a phone? Are they looking at me on a tablet? And when it figures out what device is being used to look at the website automatically responds or changes to make that work. It just moves everything around to fit, including making menus and all that kind of thing. It does it automatically. It is responsive, and that's a good thing. So make sure, if someone is building you a website or redoing your website, make sure that you are getting a website with a mobile responsive version. Okay, with a version that is not a separate website, but one that is responsive, one that can automatically adjust depending on the device being used. Okay. And if you want to know if your website looks good on on your phone, pull it up. You'd be surprised how many people have never looked at their own website on their phone. You might as well, because the majority of people who are looking at your website are no longer looking at it on a PC. They're looking at it on their phones now. Number 10. Does your service include ongoing search engine optimization, also known as SEO? And if so, do you have any examples, any success examples of people you've helped with this? Most web designers don't know anything about SEO. It's completely foreign to them. Most web designers are basically graphic designers who learned how to code web pages. SEO has everything to do about content and layout and how you're doing it. And so it requires another type of expertise. And a lot of people who design websites don't have that expertise. And so this question becomes very important. Do they have someone there who understands SEO? Now, let me give you some clues for web designers who try to fake it on this question. If you say, will my website show up in Google results, which is how most people ask that question, they of course will say, yes, definitely will. We are putting in all these keywords and all these meta tags. Hang up on them. If they're talking keywords and meta tags, that is sold 10 years ago. And that's not how it works anymore. Google doesn't care about keywords and meta tags anymore. Okay? Google cares about content. Google cares about the text that you have, not secret keywords you put in meta tags. Unfortunately, That's what many web designers see. And that's what they believe, is that by going in and doing these 10-year-old irrelevant things to your website, it's going to make a difference, and it won't. Okay. So if they start talking about keywords and meta tags, hang up. And if they do have one, if they do have someone that they've helped with SEO, find out who it is. And then do your own search and say, hey, what do they show up for? And then you try that search yourself on Google and see what happens. I'm telling you, if you don't show up on the first page of Google, you don't exist. Did you hear that? If you don't show up on the first page, you don't exist. You know, there's only 10 people who make the first page. That's because Google only shows 10. Now, Google will show more, but those are paid ads and some other stuff. But there's only 10 natural, organic results. And if you're a number 11, that means you're on the next page of Google results. No one ever goes there. Okay? No one ever goes there. If they don't find what they want on the first page of Google results, guess what they do? They change their search. That's why this is so important. You want to make sure that you're showing up. And we'll have talks on SEO because it's not as hard as a lot of people are making it out to be. Number 11. Do you help me with social media? And if so, how? Having a website, like I said, is required, but it's not the only thing you're going to do if you're trying to get all your online ducks in a row. Social media is going to be key. You've got to be participating in social media, and it's got to be done correctly. And most business owners do not have that kind of expertise. And so they depend on their web designer many times to help them with that. And they might even pay the web designer to do postings on their behalf. With all the problems I have with that scenario, which we'll talk about later, but with all the problems I have with that scenario, you've got to realize that if you're not going to do your own social media, you need someone to do it. Because a website that just stands on its own won't do anything for you. Think of it this way. If you have a website, you've got to convince people to come to you. When you have social media, you go to them. Okay? Social media is way more proactive than a website that simply waits to be found. Okay? And if they help you with social media, how? What are they going to do? Are they just going to make posts for you? Are they going to create an account and hand it over to you? What are they going to do? Number 12. What is the typical turnaround for a site like mine? You're not trying to hold their feet to the fire on this. You're not trying to say that if they say 30 days, then it's guaranteed to be 30 days. That's not what you're saying. What you really want to know is typically how long does it take for them? Now, keep in mind the customer has a lot bigger say in this and how long it takes than they realize. Because when I was building websites, I swear, we could have had it done in weeks, but I was waiting on things from the customer. I needed a version of their logo. I needed a picture of this employee for the staff page. I needed, the content or the paragraph or the blogs or the this or that or pictures of their product or the product descriptions. I needed this. And if they don't give it to me in a timely manner when I ask for it, well, the project drags on. I'll move to another project and put theirs on hold. So ask them what the typical turnaround is. And then if you're going to use them, make sure you have all your stuff together, have all those pictures, have all that content ready to go. Because the sooner you give it to them, the faster your website gets launched. And also you got to realize the more people they have on doing your website, the higher likelihood it'll be done faster. If it's just one guy working from his house, well, guess what? You're competing with every other website on his list for his attention. And If he gets sick one day or goes on vacation, you're stuck. That's why I'm, like I said, not a huge fan of one-person web design. Okay. I like to have an established company with multiple people in it. And that way you have some redundancy, especially if one of them gets hit by a bus or something. When the meeting is over, okay, and whatever that meeting is. See, the way I see this is that checklist, which you will get, is like a piece of paper that you can fill out. And you put the name of the vendor you're talking to at the top. And then you ask the questions and you write down their answers as you go. And then when you've interviewed, say, 3 or 4 different web designers or however many you want, then you can look back at the answers on all of those and see what you wanted to do. But as soon as you finish filling out that form, as soon as you finish that telephone or in-person meeting with a web designer, here's what you got to do. Ask yourself this question. Did they ask about my customers? One of the big mistakes that a lot of newbie web designers make is they only ask, like, let's say you're the customer and I'm the web designer. They would say something like this. So, what kind of website do you like? What kind of website would you like? What colors would you like? And notice how I'm directing all those questions to you. If I never mention your customers, then that's a big mistake, because here's the deal. It really doesn't matter whether you like your website. It only matters if your customers do. I've told you stories in the past where I've built a website and it was designed to please the owner. It was designed, you know, I love lawyers, but sometimes they can be the worst. I remember making a website for one lawyer, and it wasn't for his customers. It wasn't for people looking for a lawyer. I built the website, and he told me this so he could show it off to his friends on the golf course. And the picture on the front was of him going like this, just looking all regal, and it's ridiculous. A website should be designed for your customers. So if the web designer is not asking questions about your customers and what they like and don't like, find another one. Once again, it ain't about you. It's about your customers. Did the web designer try to bury you in geek speak, trying to impress you with their technical prowess? You'd be surprised how many web designers you'll call up and then they'll start throwing out stuff left and right. Oh, we use HTML version 5 and we use this and that and this kind of hosting and it's a Unix based blah, 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 blah. And they're throwing all these words that you have no clue what they mean. And the way they talk about them, you almost feel like you should know what they mean. And you don't want to show your ignorance by asking them what they mean. So you pretend to understand and you tell yourself that, well, they really seem to know what they're talking about, even though I don't understand what they're saying, but they seem to know what they're talking about. So if someone is talking in geek speak to you and really trying to nerd out and just bury you in multisyllabic words, go somewhere else. If they can't explain everything they're doing in plain English to you, then you're not going to have a good experience. You're not. Okay. You're a business owner. You don't work for the Geek Squad. And so they shouldn't expect you to know all the lingo in their industry. Did they pressure me? In other words, when you were on the phone or they're in person, did they pressure you in any way? Did they say something to the effect of, well, we have a special, but as soon as you walk out that door, it's gone. Or, if you'll sign today, we can throw in a blah, blah, blah. Be careful. And there's another form of pressure too. If you ever go to a web designer who starts putting down his competition, leave immediately. It's okay to ask about competition. But if you're the one being asked, if you're a web designer being asked about your competition, don't ever talk bad about your competition. Look at me. Don't ever talk bad about your competition. It will only burn you. So the big question is, if you are a business owner and someone comes up and says, "Oh, well, tell me about your competition." Here's what I say. I say, you know what? Those guys are great. They're great at what they do. But here's how we're different. Here's what we do. Always flip the conversation back to you. Never want to be caught talking about someone else. And also, you also don't want word out there, getting out there that you're really talking bad about the competition. Whenever I would get word like that, you'd be surprised how many clients are turned off by that. They are totally turned off by that kind of talk. So just reroute the conversation, say that your competition is great, and then move on. And don't pressure people, let them make up their mind. Okay, I reserved the last few minutes for questions because there was so much content in this one. And there's usually tons of extra questions on this topic when it comes up. So now's your
So
chance.
I have a question, and I know there's questions going to probably come in. And we did have a comment that someone said, thank you, very down to earth and informative. So thank you, Eric, for that. What about, okay, I was thinking about events and stuff. What about event websites where you just want them up for a little bit of time?
Whoa, okay. An event website, you don't really need a website for a single event. Now, if you're a nonprofit and you do an annual event every year, then sure, get a website for that one event. But if it's a single event, I would more specifically stick to social media for that. And you can put a lot of information in there. Now, if it's an event where you need people to sign up, there's a lot of event programs out there and websites out there. I mean, what do y'all like to use at the SPDC?
For our events, we use our website.
Oh, okay. My point is that there's a lot of websites out there that you can, it'll handle registration, it'll handle taking payment, it'll handle, printing out name badges. And I mean, it depends on what you're trying to do. But there's a lot of websites out there that are designed specifically for single events. Okay, and I'm trying to think of the biggest one out there because I've used it so many times and now I just can't think of it. But I think of it, I'll let you know. Another question?
Eric, there's a question that was emailed to us before the webinar, and it says, what is your opinion of Guru? I did not know what it was, so I had to look it up. Guru, Guru. Have you heard of it before?
No, I know what a guru is, but I haven't heard of a service called Guru.
So yeah, the Google search, and this may be correct or incorrect, I do not know. Once again, I've never heard of it, but it says Guru is one of the best freelance websites to find and hire freelancers online and get work done.
Oh, okay. It says it's a site that has freelancers on it. Yeah, there's a lot of them out there. I mean, Fiverr is another good one. You can go out and find freelance guys. I will tell you this. I'm okay with finding freelancers, but make sure, because you will probably never meet them ever. Make sure you really vet them well. I want to see examples. I want to talk to their customer. I would vet them well because there's a lot of scams and con artists out there who'll promise you the world for $5. And it's just not going to happen. So be very careful with that. If you don't have local options, I mean, if you're not in a city big enough to have local web designers, then you're going to have to use something like that. But I would still prefer to use a vendor that someone I trust has had a good experience with, if that's even possible. Great question. Is there another one?
Yeah, we've got one in the Q&A. What about pay websites? What's your opinion?
Okay. If you're going to have a website, and I'm making an assumption here, and what you mean by pay website is that you want to be able to take credit cards on your website. A pay website, an e-commerce website is what we call it, is a totally different ball of wax. I prefer that it be hosted on an e-commerce platform because it's got to take credit cards. It's got to do it securely. And trust me, you don't want to be the one in charge of making sure that's happening. And you don't want your little guy who works out of his house next door building websites to be in charge of that either. So you need to trust a platform that can handle all the security involved. The best one I've ever found is Shopify, shopify.com. It's the best one out there. And you can even hire web designers to work in that platform. There's web designers who are very good at it. So if you're looking at taking credit cards securely and safely and want to have a shopping cart and have search and have product catalogs and all those wonderful things, then I would check out Shopify. Other questions?
I don't see any other questions. Oh, Leslie, did you have one?
Well, I just wanted to know if you could talk just real quickly again about the search engine optimization, because I know that you build the website, but it's really important that people find the website. Should your name on the website reflect? Would that help?
Well, I mean, I'm going to have a whole SEO episode coming up, but I'll give you some of the highlights. I'll give you a few highlights. One of the tests you need to do is to go to Google and you need to type in the name of your company. And you need to see what comes up. It's not a question of do you show up on the page at all? Like, oh, yay, I typed in the name of our company and we're number 8. No, you need to be number 1. Forget the ads. Those don't count. But you need to be number 1 for your own company name. If you're not number 1 for your own name, then your website was not designed very well. I mean, that should almost be a given that you're number 1 for your own name. Your name of your company is what I mean. And so that should be your first clue. But the second clue ought to be, if you go in and type what the product you make, not the product name you gave it, but the product type, whatever product in your industry, whatever it's called, and the name of your city, do you show up on the first page or not? You'd be surprised how many people have a website that doesn't even show up for what they do. And it's because they don't talk about what they do. They talk about the people who run it. They talk about customer service. They talk about where they're located, but they never talk about what they do, or they don't talk about it enough. So SEO is going to be key, but keep in mind that SEO is all about text. It's not about pictures. If your website just has a bunch of pictures, it'll never be found by anybody. Okay, Google only looks at text, when deciding whether your web page is relevant or not. I don't want to go into too much more because it'll give it away. But SEO is key and everyone can do it. It's not that difficult. Other questions?
So how often do you think that you should be updating your website?
Your website ought to be updated fairly regularly. Keep in mind, whichever website is updated the most usually does very well in Google, because Google always wants to show relevancy. You know, Google wants to reward people who update. And so those websites tend to show up first. I would say that if you're not updating your website once a week, then you're probably not going to compete very well. And that updating, when I say updating, I mean adding to, like writing a blog, posting a video with a transcript, doing something, okay? Your website needs to be more important than you're making it out to be. Like I said, a lot of people forget about it. But I'm here to tell upwards of 90% of the people, that's their first impression is your website. Other questions?
We don't have any other questions. I do want to update everybody that we have Eric again on Friday at noon for 5 signs your website needs an overhaul. So I guess we're getting the beginning here, and then we'll go into websites that have already been developed and how to overhaul them or update them. So we will have him again on Friday for that.
Definitely. That'll be a fun one.
Yeah.
So, did I see a hand raised? Thought I did, maybe not.
I
Okay.
don't see a hand raised. Oh,
Oh,
looks like we do have a hand raised. I will go ahead and let that person talk. Go ahead and unmute yourself. So you're still muted. If you can unmute
Okay.
yourself. There we go. Excellent.
How much should a website cost?
That's the one question I was waiting for. I will tell you, that's a great question. The thing about it is there is no fixed cost for a website. That's
Okay.
kind of like saying, how much is a car? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because you can get, I've created websites for people where I charged anything from $5. I was done donating quite a bit. And I've actually charged $25,000 for a website. Okay. So it depends on the scope of that kind of website. That's why I highly recommend that when you talk to people, they better give you a price.
Okay.
And you need to know, some people won't charge you an upfront price. They will charge a monthly price. And then want you to stay with them for at least a year. Kind of spread it out, because what they're doing is they're offering other services like SEO,
Okay.
like social media and stuff like that. So we'll spread out those payments. But don't worry, I'm going to give you an answer. On average, when I would just do a little basic website for a small company, no taking credit cards, mainly just want to have a presence, maybe 5, 6, 7 pages, I was charging anywhere from maybe 2,000, 2,500, somewhere in there. But that's if they got me everything I needed and it wasn't that hard. Okay.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
good question. Great question.
I think one of the most important things you brought up is being able to update it yourself without having to go through the web designer every time. If you just want to make a small update on a regular basis. I know sometimes I had a friend that had a website, and every time she wanted to get anything updated, she had to go through the web designer. So by the time she actually got a hold of her and talked to her and stuff and told her what she wanted, and this isn't quite what it was, it was already too late.
Yeah. Think of it like a house. The way I like to think of it is a house. You buy a house, you should be able to decorate it. But if you need some major renovation, take out a wall here, put in a new kitchen, well, then maybe you pay for that. But putting up pictures on the wall and all that, moving furniture around a little, maybe, you ought to be able to do that.
So if we don't have any more questions, we will send the checklist out to all attendees. We also will have it pre-recorded on demand on our website for the next week, so anyone can go back and review it. And again, we will have Eric back on Friday for the 5 signs that your website needs an overhaul. So if there's not anything else today, everyone have a great rest of your day, and we will see you for the next webinar. Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
y'all.